Another move actually that's been announced in the last day or so has been Dominik Szoboszlai. Which
how many times are we going to pronounce that differently between us?
I mean, I've heard a lot of people say Szoboszlai. You said Szoboszlai, didn't you?
I thought it was Szoboszlai.
Well,
we'll get there
there's
eventually.
Going to be plenty of different interpretations, I feel, of this. I feel like this one was quite... There wasn't actually many murmurs about this coming out. I saw something that was linked with Newcastle a couple of weeks ago. Apparently they were sniffing around him. Obviously he's had this release clause, which Liverpool have come in and paid for it. Me, I'm a little bit sceptical. I think he's a very talented midfielder. Mm-hmm. But we've seen what happened, obviously, when Naby Keita came to the Premier League. He was obviously very highly thought of in the Bundesliga, obviously when it came for big money as well. Do you think that Liverpool have made quite a smart move in this instance? He's showed a lot of talent in the Bundesliga. Very creative player. Obviously, he can take players on. He's a very good passer of the ball. He's probably one of the highest creators actually in the league from the statistics that I've seen. To make a comparison between him and another Premier League player. He actually created 2.7 chances per 90 minutes over the last 2 seasons. James Maddison in the Premier League created 2.5 per game, per 90 minutes, which is quite impressive. What do you make of it?
I think it's a really interesting signing because I don't think it was necessarily the profile of midfielder that we were expecting Liverpool to go for after McAllister. We know that Liverpool needed to refresh that midfield and it needed 2 or 3 new faces. I wonder if this is kind of the Thiago Alcantara that they wanted, someone who will create a lot more. I mean, he's someone who, I think he got 8 assists in the Bundesliga last season and 6 goals. So he knows how to chip in and contribute. And with Liverpool's attacking line, they need someone that's going to put that on for them. I kind of assumed that was going to be Trent's role this season, or even McAllister as well. We know he has the capability of linking play really, really well. So I think it's interesting to know how they'll set up now, whether it's a case of Fabinho, McAllister and Szoboszlai. Or go on, you do it again.
Szoboszlai.
There you go. One of us will get it right eventually. Whether it's a case of those 3 playing together and Trent coming into the midfield from defence, like we've kind of seen City do this year, or maybe a rotation of that. Maybe they're not done in the market. There's talk of Lavia still, isn't there, from Southampton?
Yeah.
So I do think it's a really interesting signing. I think 60 million seems like the going rate these days. So it's really hard to compare whether it's value or not. But when you see the attacking numbers he was putting out last season for Leipzig, it seems like clever business, particularly when there are other clubs that are competing with Liverpool right now that were sniffing around him. Like you mentioned Newcastle, you'd much rather him be at Liverpool than at Newcastle if you're a Liverpool fan. Let's be honest. And actually, I feel like in today's market, even if Liverpool want to sell him on in a year, he's 23, they'll get 60 million back for him, won't they? I feel like that's pretty easy business for a creative player of that sort of age. I don't know. Where does he fit into Liverpool's system, do you think? Do you think that's the midfielder they needed? I feel like it's a Coutinho replacement about 10 years later.
They definitely did need something in terms of creativity in midfield, and it's something that we've obviously discussed, haven't we, over the last, it feels like ages, the last 12 months, 18 months.
Yeah.
It will be definitely interesting. I don't think there's going to be a better manager than Jurgen Klopp to introduce into this league. I feel like
very true.
He will mould this over time and time. And if Szoboszlai was kind of in between, and Newcastle were obviously a legitimate club who were interested in them as well, then if you think in between Jurgen Klopp and Eddie Howe, you will go with Jurgen Klopp. And I think Jurgen Klopp's a perfect manager to introduce into this league.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of midfielder who's going to be perfect defensively. He's not known for making a great deal of interceptions, not known for kind of positionally being brilliant in terms of when he's off, not got the ball. But I feel like Klopp will be brilliant in introducing his philosophy to him and kind of get him to buy into it, just like he has, he's been able to over the last few years. It's going to be very fascinating because I feel with Liverpool, we feel as though we did mention they needed a rebuild, and they're kind of getting it now. We're in the middle of it. Obviously, they've had McAllister in. Now they get in, obviously, Szoboszlai as well. And like you mentioned, it's 2 midfielders that they definitely needed. It's just a question of how they are going to set up.
Complement each
I think
other.
that's the complex thing, really, that we're trying to work out.
Do they do more in the market now, do you think? In that area or in any area, I guess?
It makes sense if the Lavia links are true, that they're looking for somebody who's going to come in and sit in. He's a very young player, a very, very solid player, and who's, he's been linked with a lot of big clubs. And I think it's 50 million, I think, Southampton won, which I'll be very surprised.
Seems mental.
I'll be very surprised if they get that, considering...
Dave, I don't know what any player is worth this year.
No.
I haven't got a clue what the going value is for a player. I wonder if I would be worth $1 million by now. Like that seems like the market's going that way.
Yeah, I do feel as though they need a player of that kind of profile who's going to sit in there, do the dirty work, mop up, and
learn from Fabinho, maybe
with building play from the back. And it does seem like Fabinho, we're kind of wondering whether he can still do it at the very top, because last season he did look kind of a shadow of his former self. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. But
do you think they play together? Do you think Szoboszlai and McAllister play together very often? Or do you think it's one or the other? Because they still have Thiago, they still have Henderson, they still have Fabinho. So although we thought those options needed improving, they are there. Curtis Jones is still there, and he looked really sharp at the end of the season. Harvey Elliott's still there. How often do you play those two together? That's the only thing for me.
It really depends, though, because you can't play them two with Trent in that position, in that hybrid role.
No, probably not.
Because then who's the defensive-minded midfielder, really?
Yeah. It's got to be Fabinho then, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, McAllister has played deeper for Brighton at times, but I don't know. I think it's a really good sign-in. I'm not doubting it for a second. I'm just really interested to know how they line up with it. Like, we talked about the Pau Torres sign-in for Villa earlier, and it seems really obvious how he fits the system. Not where he plays. It's kind of a given where he'll play because it's one position he plays. But the way he fits the system makes a lot of sense. With this sign-in, how does that work with the way Liverpool have been lining up lately? Or maybe that's why. Maybe they need to change the way they've been lining up. I don't know. I'm interested to see him more than kind of anyone else I've seen move so far this window.